Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today on the webinar introducing Wi-Fi 6 and multi-gig switching. My name is Daniel Marsh, and I'm one of the sales engineers here at Zyzel UK. So some of you may have already spoken to me in the past. So as you're probably aware, I come from a bit of a technical background and always here to help you with any questions you may have. We will have a questions and answer section at the end, but feel free to post your questions throughout the webinar, and then what I'll do is I'll come to them at the end, and then we can discuss them and hopefully answer them all for you. So the purpose of today's webinar is to introduce the new Wi-Fi 6 and multi-gig switching. As we know, as technology is becoming the norm, obviously with the current COVID-19 situation that we've got, many more people in connection, and what you'll find is that services are suffering a lot of demand. So I mean, even for instance, Microsoft Teams, first couple of weeks in lockdown, that even started to suffer, and so did certain webinars and the Zoom platform as well. So, but moving on to the Wi-Fi, as it sort of generation as technology evolves, the average user actually checks their phone 85 times a day. So this isn't necessarily just for social media or for personal gain. When it comes to business appliances as well, I know I'm on my phone quite a lot of the time. I'm obviously on LinkedIn and things like that. So you actually find that you spend more of your time using technology that uses the internet wireless connectivity more and more each day, and that's only going to increase. It's not going to reduce over time. So being a vendor and obviously looking towards the future, we obviously need to make sure we implement technologies into this environment. So some of the statistics that we've got is that there's going to be 7 billion businesses be connected to the internet worldwide, and 20 billion devices connected to the internet. I personally think with the current crisis that number is probably set to increase. I know there's been a massive shortage of laptops and webcams over the course of the lockdown as well, because of the need for working at home. So these sort of statistics actually fall into every single vertical as well. So if you only deal with certain verticals such as hospitality or education, the need is everywhere. So retail, hospitals, restaurants and cafes. I mean, I know some places that even do public Wi-Fi out in the shopping centres and things like that. So again, people are really reliant on it. And I mean, events as well, when they all start kicking off, they like to maintain a good level of internet connectivity as well. So in order to help us with this, and 6, so this is what's called the standard is 802.11ax, and this is the replacement or the upgrade to 802.11ac, which is what we're all currently familiar with. I'm not going to go too much on technical details today. I mean, if you do have any technical questions or anything like that, fire them across to me and I'll do my best to answer them. If not, I'm always available offline to help you as well. So some of the key sort of points of Wi-Fi 6 is theoretically you can get a top speed of 9.6 gigabit per second. So this isn't necessarily to one device, but this is to multiple devices. So high congested networks being able to offer that extra bit of capacity. And I do have some statistics to show you the differences between the standards as well. So we've got about 4 times capacity and performance in terms of what it can actually do. So the hardware that's implemented into it and the performance increase you get is about four times the capacity as what it has been previously. And it's still dual band as well, so we can still operate in both the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum and the 5 gigahertz spectrum as well. So a bit like what the AC does, so making use of both them spectrums. So some of the features that Wi-Fi 6 brings, so we've got an 8x8 MIMO download and upload. Now this is quite an important one because previously, obviously, a lot of connections state that it is MIMO. However, with the 802.11ac Way 2 products, that is only supported on the downlink. So that's you downloading information. It'll only work on MIMO. However, with the new AX improvements, it will actually provide you the support on both the downlink and the uplink. So that's the download and the upload of information. You've got the OFDMA as well, which is quite a really nice technology, and I've got a couple more slides on this later on. But the DMA is uses like the 4G LTE's proven and fundamental technology. So it allows users, multiple users, with varying bandwidth needs to be served simultaneously. So if I'm waiting for some information and you're waiting for some information, we'll get it at the same time. And the way it does this is it actually breaks down the resource units and the sort of channel to increase the range. As I say, I've got quite a nice slide which shows a good visual representation of that. So the resource units is resource unit scheduling. That's quite important because every bit of data that's sent is categorized into a resource unit schedule, and being able to schedule that allows it to deal with it much more effectively. Not only that, we've also the modulation rates have increased, so it means that you get higher modulation speed. So the connection of your computer to the actual access point, the higher the modulation, the better. It means more data can be squeezed through it. The BSS color frame, that's quite important because if you've got two access points in a similar sort of location and you're sat in the middle of it, it sometimes flips from one access point to the other, especially if they're in relatively similar signal levels. What the BSS color does, it actually provides like a color code to each access point. So once you've been connected to an access point, you will by default go to the color code that you've been provided. So rather than switching from one access point to another, which can cause data loss, it will actually maintain you on the correct access point until you get to a certain threshold where the other access point is a better connection. So rather than it sort of deciding which one to go to because they both look pretty much similar in terms of signal, we'll stick with that one until we know the other one is the best sort of signal. And the target wake up time, that's just really a power saving feature. So it is another important resource feature supported by the 11AX protocol. It allows devices to negotiate when and how often they wake up to send and receive the data. So it increases the device sleep time and in turn substantially increases the battery life of your devices as well, which is obviously important if we're checking our phones quite a number of times a day. So some of the real world improvements that we've got. So let's break it down into the different types of wireless. We've got Wi-Fi 4, which is the 802.11n. So this is going back quite a number of years now. And you'll see that the maximum theoretical speed is only 600 meg. So we're not even hitting a gig at that point. And then when we move to Wi-Fi 5, which is the AC standard that we're all familiar with at the minute, the theoretical speeds allow you up to 6.9 gigabit per second. Again, this isn't to any one computer. This is to everybody that's connected to the access point. And you'll see both the 2x2 and the 4x4 antennas what the connectivity level you get per device. So 866 megabits per second or 1.7 gigabits per second on the Wave 2 Wi-Fi 5 Wave 2 kit. With the Wi-Fi 6, you can see that's been a great improvement to 6.9 gigabits per second. And again, it's also increased to the smaller elements as well. So you can see that the Wi-Fi 6 really does come into its own when it comes to increasing performance for wireless connectivity. So, I mean, some of the technical improvements, I mean, you can see at the stage of Wi-Fi 4, 5, and 6 as to when they were released. You can have a look at what bands it actually supports as well. And then one of the interesting things is obviously the SUMIMO and MU-MIMO. So that's single user MIMO and multi-user MIMO. And you'll see that when we start getting into the AC stuff, there's two elements. So not only is it Wi-Fi 5, it's also Wi-Fi 5.1. So we've got Wave 1 and Wave 2. And Wave 1, which was obviously out first, can only support SUMIMO, and Wave 2 can do MU-MIMO. But again, that is only on the downlink, not on the uplink, whereas the AX improves that and allows you to run it on both the downlink and the uplink. So the OFDMA, which I deem one of the most important features about it. So as you can see, 802.11a, N, and AC work with OFDM, which as you can see, each color represents a specific user. So this is someone's physical device. And as you can see, it's placed into a certain logical order in which the data is requested and when it's going to be served its information. When it comes to the new wireless AX, what it actually does is these channels that they're sat in, so these slots are actually broken up into smaller channels or smaller resource units as they're called. So it means that I can actually serve user one, not only on their allocated first slot, but I can also provide them a little bit of data on the second slot as well as while I'm serving some of the other users. So it means that I can actually provide more data to each and every user much more quicker and much more effectively as well. And combined with the uplink and the downlink MIMO, it massively improves things where it didn't before. I mean, if that isn't clear on what it does, I have got quite a nice little picture. So on the left-hand side, you'll see that we're towing a shuttle down the road. At that point, that is a user being provided data. But because it's only using OFDM, anybody who's behind them waiting for data is basically queuing. They have to follow that level of data before they can get it. Whereas with the AX resource unit, it actually breaks it up. So it allows me to serve a lot more people and a lot more devices at the same time. I mean, you look at that picture of all the cars and you sit there and think to myself, wow, that is a lot of traffic. And yeah, it is a lot of traffic. And the one thing to bear in mind is at the other end of the tunnel, what's it going to do? Is it going to funnel down into a single lane, or is it going to continue on? So that's one of the improvements that we're going to be looking at with a multi-gig, because there's no point in having a wireless access point that provides you all this resource units and all this improvements to wireless connectivity to allow that data to flow, and then all of a sudden you stick it onto a switch which can't handle the cope, and therefore you're causing your own congestion and you're causing your own issues there. And as I say, we'll go into what multi-gig is and what the benefits are of them very shortly. In regards to the portfolio, the current one that we do have available within the channel at the moment is the WAX650S. So as you can see, that's the top of the pile. And the key thing to take away from it is the fact that it's got a 5 gigabit Ethernet port in the back of it. It has a 1 gigabit pass through, so you could plug a computer into that, for instance. But the 5 gigabit Ethernet is what is the uplink that would go to the switch. So as I said on the previous slide, if you're going to go through a tunnel and you're going to hit, say, for instance, a 1 gig port, you're going to suffer congestion. So you need to look at 5 gigabit ports, and this is where multi-gig really comes into it. It has a smart antenna technology as well. So if you haven't caught any of my previous webinars on what smart antenna is, I would advise that you have a look back at them. And I'm more than happy to have any calls with you as well to help you understand that in a bit more detail. All of these access points will be out at some point during this year, and you can see at the bottom where they initially focused at. So the first two, which are the 1100 series, so the NWA 110AX, the 210AX are aimed towards e-tail. And then you've got the WAX 510, 610, and 650S, which aim towards our value-added resellers and MSP. And talking about MSP as well, we are obviously running an MSP campaign at the moment, which is tailored towards our Nebula platform for centralized management. Now, we do run one of them. I think we had one last week, so we'll probably have one coming in the next week or two for the MSP side of things as well. So I advise that you have a quick look at them because we are looking to take our resellers on a journey and to move more into the MSP space and for you to understand what the MSP space can do for your business model. Look at multi-gig. So multi-gig is very interesting, and not only is it interesting, it's very effective when you've already got a cabled out building. So my recommendation is obviously you always look at sort of Cat 6 as a minimum, but this is sort of what you can get of it. So it provides you 10 times more throughput and twice as much PoE, and I'll explain the significance of the PoE in a few moments. But so on traditional Cat 5e cable, you can get up to 5 gigabits at 100 meter limitation. On Cat 6 onwards and Cat 6a, you can actually get up to 10 gig. Cat 6 will only go to 55 meters, but the Cat 6a will go up to 100 meters, and that's offering 10 gigabit connectivity over traditional copper cabling. So if you go into a project or a building that already has Cat 6a piped throughout the entire building, but they're suffering issues, they've only got gig switches or anything like that, rather than having to recable the entire building with fiber, with like 10 gig fiber and stuff like that, that can be very costly. You could just go in there, upgrade the switches for a multi-gig switch, and you can pump 10 gig down a normal copper cable, as long as it's 6A and you don't exceed the 100-meter limitation. So that's very important. In regards to the PoE support, so over the PoE support on the Cat5e, Cat6, and Cat6a, we can support up to 60-watt PoE delivery over that cable, based on the length limitations that are stated in front of you at the minute. So that's really important for wireless AX, because wireless AX access points, to make benefit of all the AX features such as OFDMA, the time to wake, and the modulation and things like that, you are required to provide it PoE++, or what other people refer to it as Ultra PoE, and this is 60 watt per port. So the switches that we've currently got, which are part of our multi-gig switching portfolio, the XS1930 series. So these are a new switch which has recently come out. And as you can see, it's got a few nice benefits. So it's ultra quiet cooling in terms of the fan and the noise it makes. Also benefits from smart fan, so it monitors the PoE draw, the temperature of the unit, and adjusts the fan accordingly, so that it only really needs to kick in at full whack when it is required to. You've got some nice little things, a simple display. You've obviously got the locator LED in case you're sending an engineer on site. You can flick on the locator LED from the platform, and then you can say, right, I know which switch I need to deal with. You've got the typical power and system light, and then you've also got the cloud light as well, which indicates that it's connected to our Nebula platform. Also, another feature that we've started adding into our switches is the restore button. So you've got a restore button that will take you to your last custom default by pressing the button. So you can build a config, save it as a custom default, and then by pressing that button, it will revert back. So if you do lock yourself out of a switch, or if somebody a bit inexperienced goes on the switch, make some changes and lock you out, you've got that added bit of security that it's only a press of a button away, and you'll be able to restore it back to what it was when it was fully functioning. The PoE++, so this is 8 PoE++ or Ultra PoE ports. The standard is labeled as 802.3 BT. And this will allow you to support up to 60 watt per port from the PoE budget, which on these switches is 375. So 375 watt for a switch of this size is a very, very healthy PoE budget, meaning that you can maximize the amount of access points you can get on it. Some of the technology that we've got in a lot of our PoE switches is what's called consumption mode as well. So every wireless device, when it is designed, it's designed with a classification based on its PoE draw. Most switches will actually just look at that classification and go, right, I'm going to give you 30 watts. I'm going to give you 60 watts. Basically, I'm going to give you the maximum amount of wattage that your classification dictates that you need. We don't do that. We can do that, we have the option to do that, but by default, we set it into what's called consumption mode, which means when you plug an access point in and it starts requesting the power from the unit goes, right, okay, I'm gonna give you some power. However, I need a bit more information. How much power do you actually need to function? And he's like, well, I'm classified as 60 watt, but really I only need, say, 54 watts or 35 watts or whatever. And the switch will only allocate that amount of power to that access point, because that's all it actually requires to need. It doesn't need the full 60 watts. Therefore, that wasted bit of wattage that other vendors may pump out to the access point can be reutilized and used to power more access points or VoIP phones on a different port. So it means that you can maximize the amount of wireless access points or PoE devices as such on the specific switch. So again, really good technology, and it really does help with implementations of projects and keeping costs down as well, because if you get just over your budget, you're going to have to buy a new switch, which ultimately we can get away with because of our consumption mode. We've got some dedicated uplink ports on it as well, so being able to offer sort of uplink ports to a switch at 10 gig basis. So you're on the 1930-12 HP, which is the PoE version, you get 4 uplink ports, and on the 1930-10, which is non-PoE, you only get the 2 uplink ports as well. These can be rack mounted as well. So multi-gig, as I say, you get 8 and 10 times multi-gig ports. supporting 100 meg, 1 gig, 2.5 gig, 5 gig, and 10 gig on all of the copper ports, and that's really important. I think we are the only vendor out there that actually provides you a full 10 gig multi-gig switch on every port, and I've got some statistics as well against the competition to show you that. So that's really important, and again, it is cable specific and length specific as well, so you can't just chuck it in on a Cat5 cable over 200 meters and expect it to work, because it won't. But that is a general standard. So let's have a look at a bit of the competition that we've got for multi-gig switching. So you'll see a bit of a comparison here between Zyxel 1930-10, so the non-PoE version, against its equivalent Netgear and D-Link. So you can see some of the things that have been highlighted in red are some of the things which are a disadvantage to the other vendors, such as the fact that we've got 8 ports that again run on all full multi-gig up to 10 gig, so everything in between. Whereas the Netgear and D-Link, they can only do 1 gig or 10 gig. They can't do the 2.5 gig and they can't do the 5 gig. So again, we give that sort of flexibility. So as you can see, we've got 2 uplink ports opposed to the 1 from Netgear and the 4 from D-Link. So obviously they give you a bit more uplink. And then in terms of the speed as well, you'll see that our switching capacity on it as well is 200 gigs per second. Netgear's at 160 and D-Link's at 240. So we're kind of in the middle in terms of performance there. But again, with the additional ports you get, the fact that you can utilize multi-gig across all 10 ports is a distinct benefit. So as you sort of go down as well, you can see that we've got a layer 3 light version, so it does have certain layer 3 functionality such as static routing in it, whereas the Netgear one doesn't. So that helps alleviate traffic from your gateway as well, allowing you to move the traffic around at a switching level rather than a gateway level. So one of the biggest things I see on there as well is the silent acoustic that they've mentioned. So they've got 28 decibels for ourselves, but then you look at Netgear 35.7 and 44.9. And for a non-PoE version, where it doesn't really require all the fans to be kicking in at that point, obviously would work really well in a small office environment. So as I've said, it is Nebula aware, so it can be onboarded onto our Nebula platform. But if you don't like Nebula or you haven't used Nebula, then there is a standalone version that you can configure it as well. And we do, if any are familiar with our Zon utility tool, that's an application that you can run on your computer, and it will detect our devices and allows you to make certain changes there as well. So moving on to the high-powered version against Ubiquiti and Netgear, the equivalent. Again, I think we are the only vendor that will do 100 meg, 1 gig, 2.5, 5 gig, and 10 gig on the multi-gig ports. In terms of the 10 gig SFP port uplinks that we've got, we're on par again with the competitors there. And you'll see the switching capacity at this point as well is much higher. The switching throughput is also much higher as well. And the PoE budget, as you can see, they only give you 240 watts. We give you 375. So really being able to make the most out of this switch is one of our key focuses. We've got sort of power indicators and PoE budgeting on the front of it as well. So you can easily look at the device and think, do you know what? I think I'm going to start having to implement another switch because I'm starting to run out of PoE budget. And as you can see as well with the silent acoustics, we're pretty much on par with the Netgear one as well. And again, hybrid mode, so you can have it as cloud or standalone, and you can also use that Zon utility. So as you can have a look there, just having a look at it, the specification is exactly where it needs to be. I mean, I've used the switches a couple of times, and I find them really, really good. I just need to be able to upgrade my home network to sort of 10 gig devices now, which I'm looking for new network adapters for my PC so I can accomplish that. So, I mean, that really concludes what I wanted to cover on today's webinar for Wi-Fi 6 and multi-gig. I hope you found it informative, and I'm hoping that I've either triggered some questions or any questions you might have had, I've actually already answered them. So this is your time. If you have got any questions and you want to fire them across to me, then now is your time. I'll leave the webinar open for a couple another 30 seconds or so and see if any questions start generating. Thank you very much. So Alex has just sent through a question saying, is there any sort of ruggedized version? So for some of you that might not be aware, our ruggedized versions are ones which can be housed in say, for instance, lampposts and things like that, and sort of DC powered. I'm not too sure at the moment whether or not they're looking at a ruggedized version, but in my head, logically thinking, I would say that they must bring out something. From a consumer level, we do have some multi-gig switches which are available for sort of consumer level. So I think ruggedized, especially if people start looking for the need of ruggedized switches, then yes, I suspect that they probably will look at implementing that technology in there. So we've got one from Jack Summers. Any larger multi-gig switches for the 24 port and the 48 ports? We do have some switches available that might meet your requirements, not necessarily on the multi-gig, but I can have a look what we've got in our portfolio and give you a shout back directly, Jack. I'll also have a word with the MDMs as well to see if there's anything in the roadmaps for bringing out the bigger switches. Our key focus at the minute was to obviously bring out a switch that can power our access points and provide that multi-gig capacity. And as things improve, multi-gig I think is going to become a standard, because as I say, it's all about evolving with technology and making sure we've got the capacity there for everyone. We've also got a question from Oliver. So you've signed up for the MSP program twice, and you haven't received any response. So as soon as I get off this call, Oliver, I'll check the status of your MSP, and I'll give you a call back directly just to let you know what the scenario is with that. Yeah, you're welcome, Oliver. And so when are the new Nebula-enabled USGs being launched? So this is in regards to our USG Flex product, which is being launched. I believe the actual physical device is going to be out sometime in June. I'm just waiting to see if there's been any delays because of the current situation globally. But as far as I know, it should be out in June, and it should be fully Nebula enabled by the end of the year. So I know that the research and development team are investing heavily in Nebula at the minute to put all the security features that are currently in the USG platform into the Nebula platform, so that when the USG adopts Nebula and can be moved over to it, then it's got the full feature set there, so you're not going to be losing anything if you're used to the USGs in standalone mode. So I hope that answers your question, Oliver. As I say, I will be in touch in regards to the MSP portal. If any of you, as I say, we do run an MSP webinar and a campaign at the moment, and we do have a direct MSP partner program that you can join, and I can always discuss the benefits with you in a little bit more detail. Well, that seems to be everything from the questions today. So I hope it's been informative and you got the answers you need. As I say, I've got a couple of follow-ups that I'm going to do after this afternoon, and I'll clear up all the questions then. So all I can say is thank you for joining me today. And I hope you all stay safe and are having a sort of good day, and have a good weekend as well. So thank you ever so much, and take care. Bye-bye.